I opened my credit card bill expecting the usual: groceries, prescriptions, maybe a gas charge. But instead, there it was, $28,507.32. A brand new Dodge Challenger. And the buyer? My daughter. She didn't even flinch when I asked her. "It's for Tom," she said, like that made it noble. Tom, my jobless son-in-law who treats my living room like a throne and my fridge like a free buffet. I stared at her, waiting for an apology. Instead, she rolled her eyes. "Relax, Dad. You're old. What else are you gonna do with your money?" That's when I knew I was done. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. They say time smooths out the sharp edges of memory, but I remember those early years with Lisa as if they happened yesterday. After Marjorie died, I didn't think I had it in me to raise a child on my own. She was only 6, all curls and questions, asking when Mommy was coming back. I told her the truth the best way I knew how: "Mommy had to go, sweetheart. But I'm still here." And I was. Every day. Every night. I cooked her lunches, braided her hair, not well, but I tried, and helped her with math homework even though I was always better with wood than with numbers. I built furniture for a living, custom work. Long hours, hard on the back, but honest work. After Marjorie's funeral, I poured all my grief into that shop, then came home and poured the rest into Lisa. We used to have this Sunday tradition. Pancakes in the morning, then we'd go feed ducks at the old pond behind the church. She'd wear this faded yellow hat Marjorie had bought her, refused to take it off even when it got too small. She called it her magic thinking cap. Said it made her smarter. And maybe it did. Lisa was bright. Sharp-witted, quick to laugh, and even quicker to argue, just like her mother. There were moments, especially when she was a teenager, when I'd catch her rolling her eyes the same way Marjorie used to. Or slamming her bedroom door with a flourish only they both could manage. She was never easy, but she was mine. And I loved her fiercely. I remember once, she came home crying after a school dance. Some boy had called her names, something cruel about her thrift store dress. I sat her down on the porch swing, handed her some cocoa, and said, "You wear that dress better than anyone else could. Don't let fools tell you what you're worth." She smiled then. Not because the pain was gone, but because she knew I meant it. I worked hard for us. Skipped vacations. Took extra shifts. Sold my motorcycle, my one midlife crisis indulgence, just to pay for her college prep course. And when she got into that university, I wept like a child. Not because I was sad, but because I had done it. We had done it. When she left for school, the house got quiet. Too quiet. I used to sit on her bed sometimes, not to snoop, just to feel the weight of her growing up. Her perfume lingered on the sheets, and I'd close my eyes and remember bedtime stories and science fair volcanoes. She called less frequently as the years went on. First weekly, then monthly, then only on holidays. But I didn't mind. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. Kids grow up. They make their own lives. It's natural. Still, I saved every voicemail. Every birthday card she sent. Even the ones that just said, "Love ya, Dad." 3 words, barely enough ink to show she wrote it. But I kept them all. Then she brought Tom around. At first, I thought maybe she'd finally met someone steady. Someone kind. He was polite enough, but there was something slick about him, too many compliments, too much cologne. His handshake was limp, his smile a little too rehearsed. But I bit my tongue. It wasn't my place to judge. They got married the following year. Small ceremony in the backyard, just how Marjorie would have liked it. Lisa asked me to walk her down the aisle, and I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe she's found happiness. Maybe all the years of sacrifice were worth it. I gave her the house as a gift, in writing, though I kept my name on the deed for emergencies. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lisa, but I also took out a small life insurance policy that would go to her if anything happened to me. I figured it was what any father would do. Make sure his daughter's safe. Make sure she never goes without. For a time, things were quiet. She'd visit with Tom now and then, usually to borrow something, a lawnmower, a tool, a checkbook. I didn't mind. I thought it was just how young couples were starting out. I didn't see the patterns. Or maybe I did and just chose not to. I remember one afternoon, maybe 2 years into their marriage, Lisa came by alone. We sat on the porch swing, like old times, sipping lemonade. She looked tired, worn down. "Do you ever miss Mom?" she asked out of the blue. "All the time," I said. She nodded slowly, like that hurt to hear. Then she asked, "Do you ever wish you'd started over? Married again?" I laughed. "Why? So I could split this little house even more?" She smiled at that. But then she went quiet. Real quiet. That kind of quiet where the air feels heavier. "Thanks for everything, Dad," she said, and kissed my forehead. Looking back, I wonder if that moment was real or rehearsed. If she meant it, or if she was just softening me up for the storm I didn't see coming. Because not long after that, things began to shift. Slowly, subtly. A comment here. A request there. Less warmth. More calculation. I had no idea the girl I raised, the one who wore a magic thinking cap and cried over a thrift store dress, would become the woman who'd steal from me in plain sight, and then tell me to relax. But I wasn't ready to see that yet. Not then. The signs didn't come all at once. They trickled in, like a slow leak in the roof, just enough to ignore at first, but dangerous if you let it go too long. It started with Tom. He always had some reason why he couldn't keep a job. My boss was a jerk. The hours were unfair. They didn't appreciate my ideas. I listened politely, offered suggestions, trade school, handyman gigs, even said I could get him into the shop with my old crew. He always had an excuse ready. He'd sit on my porch drinking my coffee, scrolling his phone, chuckling to himself while I raked leaves or cleaned gutters. Never offered to help. Never even asked. Lisa, once so quick to roll up her sleeves beside me, started mirroring his attitude. When I asked her about work, she'd shrug. Still between jobs, but Tom's got something lined up. That something never seemed to materialize. She stopped calling me Dad. Started calling me Pops, half joking, like I was just some old man hanging around. I brushed it off. Laughed with her. Told myself it was harmless, a generational thing. But then came the little digs. "You still drive that old truck? Come on, Pops, live a little. Why do you keep the thermostat so low? It's freezing in here. You know you could sell this place and get a condo near the beach, right?" She said it with a smile, always with a laugh, like we were just tossing ideas around. But I felt it. The distance. The unspoken judgments. The hints that my life, my routines, my values, were somehow outdated. Disposable. The worst part? I started believing her. I'd catch myself second-guessing everything. Was I being stingy by not handing over money when they asked? Was I selfish for not downsizing and handing them the rest? They were struggling, right? Isn't that what parents are supposed to do, help? One day, I walked into the kitchen to find Tom rummaging through my mail. He didn't even look guilty. "Just checking for that tax rebate Lisa mentioned," he said with a grin. I didn't say a word. Just took the envelopes and walked back out. But my hands were shaking. From that day forward, I kept my mail in the glove box of my truck. Then came the financial asks. They started small: gas money, a loan to cover rent while Tom waited for a client to pay, groceries here and there. I helped. Of course I did. But they never paid me back. Not once. And the more I gave, the less gratitude I saw. At one point, I noticed the good coffee was disappearing faster than usual. Same with the steaks I kept in the freezer for Sunday dinners. Tom would help himself without asking, then toss the wrappers in the trash like it was nothing. I didn't mind sharing, but there's a difference between family and freeloading. And they had long since crossed that line. Lisa changed too. Her voice, her posture, colder, more clipped. The way she looked at me started to feel like pity. Like she saw an old man in his last chapter, not her father who built this home with his bare hands. One night, we sat around the dinner table, just the three of us. I'd made roast chicken. Tom barely touched it, said he was on a keto thing. Lisa scrolled through her phone the entire meal. I asked her about a project she'd once been passionate about, graphic design classes she used to dream about turning into a business. She looked up and said, "That was a phase, Dad. I'm not chasing fairy tales like you and Mom did." I didn't reply. I couldn't. The lump in my throat wouldn't let me. I cleared the plates in silence. Later that week, I walked into the garage and found Tom smoking with his feet propped on my tool chest, the same chest Marjorie gave me our first Christmas as husband and wife. The same chest Lisa used to draw smiley faces on with sidewalk chalk. "Hey Pops," he said through a puff of smoke. "You ever think about putting this house in Lisa's name now? Might help with some tax stuff." He said it like it was just an idea. No big deal. But my body froze. It wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't about helping or supporting. It was about taking. The air between us shifted that day. I think he noticed it too, because he didn't come around as often after that unless Lisa was with him. Still, I said nothing. I told myself families go through seasons. Maybe they were just stressed. Maybe I wasn't being generous enough. Maybe the world was changing and I hadn't caught up. But deep down, I knew something was breaking. Something fragile that I had spent decades trying to protect, the bond between parent and child, built on trust, respect, and love. And I could feel it slipping from my hands like sawdust on a windy day. I started locking my bedroom door at night. Not because I feared them, but because I no longer trusted what I meant to them. It was a Wednesday, I remember because it was senior discount day at the grocery store. I had a short list: milk, eggs, some of that good rye bread I liked. I even grabbed a chocolate bar at the checkout, feeling a little indulgent. The clerk rang it all up, and I swiped my card. Declined. I frowned. Tried again. Declined. "Maybe a chip issue," she said politely, already shifting her eyes to the next customer. I paid cash and left, heart thudding too fast for a man my age. Something was wrong. When I got home, I pulled up my credit card account online. I almost dropped my laptop. $28,507.32. A brand new Dodge Challenger. Purchased 5 days ago. In my name. I stared at the screen so long, I stopped blinking. My stomach twisted. I walked outside, needing air, but the summer heat clung to me like guilt. Lisa pulled up not 5 minutes later, like fate had delivered her to my doorstep. And right behind her, the car. Sleek. Flashy. Red enough to humiliate the color red itself. Tom got out of the driver's seat like he was stepping onto a movie set. Grinning. Wearing sunglasses. Chewing gum. Lisa waved like everything was normal. I didn't say a word. Just held out the credit card statement. She glanced at it. Didn't even pretend to be surprised. "Oh, that. Yeah. We needed something reliable." Tom's old car died, and we didn't have time to wait for loan approval. I just kept staring at her. She looked bored. You stole from me. It's not stealing, Dad. It's family. You'll pay it off, no problem. No problem. My voice cracked. Tom snorted. It's not like you're using your money for anything important. I looked at him. This man, lounging in front of my house like he owned it. Wearing $200 sneakers. And then I looked at my daughter, my little girl, who used to draw me pictures of us holding hands under rainbows. Now she was standing in my driveway, defending a theft like it was a parking ticket. You didn't even ask, I said quietly. Lisa scoffed. Because you would have said no. And you're always talking about family comes first. Well, now it does. The words hit me like a slap. Not because they were cruel, but because they were spoken with such casual entitlement. Like this was just the new arrangement, and I needed to get used to it. Neighbors were outside. Mr. Halbert from across the street was trimming his hedges. He looked over but said nothing. I caught his eyes for a second. Then he looked away. I turned and walked inside, my legs heavier with each step. I sat down in my chair, Marjorie's chair, really, and just breathed. For a long time, I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. That night, I didn't sleep. My thoughts wouldn't let me. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. The sacred bond between a parent and their child, the understanding that after all the sleepless nights, scraped knees, school plays, and broken hearts, they would still love you enough to ask. To respect the lines you've drawn. Lisa had crossed every line. Without hesitation. I thought of Marjorie. Of her last days in that same chair, wrapped in a quilt, smiling at Lisa even when she was too weak to hold a conversation. She's got a good heart, Marjorie once whispered to me. She's just young. Give her time. Had I waited too long? Had I given her too much time? The next morning, I stepped outside and saw the Challenger in the driveway again. Tom was washing it with the hose like a proud teenager. Shirtless. Whistling. He waved at me. Morning, Pops. I didn't wave back. Lisa appeared at the door with 2 coffee mugs. She offered one. I didn't take it. Dad, you're making this a bigger deal than it is, she said, clearly annoyed. We needed a car. We'll pay you back eventually. With what? I asked. Excuses? She glared. You've got a house. You've got retirement. You'll be fine. I took a step closer. You didn't even apologize. I'm not sorry, she shouted, suddenly explosive. I'm tired of begging for scraps. You act like the money you have is some sacred treasure when all it's doing is collecting dust. We needed help, so we helped ourselves. There it was. The truth, raw and dripping with resentment. I stepped back, stunned. Not at what she said, but at how easily she said it. Lisa stormed back inside. Tom shrugged and went back to his car wash, like it was just another Tuesday. I stood there, in the driveway I paved with my own hands, the driveway where Lisa rode her bike for the first time, where Marjorie once spilled lemonade and laughed for 5 minutes straight. And I realized something I never wanted to admit. I wasn't the father anymore. I was the ATM. I was the name on the deed. I was the obstacle between my daughter and the inheritance she thought she deserved. And worse, the silence of those around us, the neighbors who saw but said nothing, the friends who stopped asking about Lisa, confirmed it. Everyone else had figured it out before I did. It's strange how the deepest betrayals don't always come with yelling or slammed doors. Sometimes, they show up in whispers behind walls you built yourself. A few days after the car incident, I noticed Lisa's old iPad still logged into my Wi-Fi. She had left it on the dining room shelf months ago, said it was too slow. I hadn't touched it. But that morning, something pulled me toward it, call it instinct, or maybe something more bitter, suspicion. I opened it. The screen lit up to a string of messages, dozens of them. Lisa's texts with Tom, casual and cruel in equal measure. Lisa, he still thinks we love this place. I can't stand the carpet, but whatever. Once he's gone, we'll gut it. Tom, how much do you think we could sell for? With the land too? Lisa, Zillow says over $600,000. That's if he doesn't get stingy about sentimental value again. Tom, tell him the furnace needs replacing. He'll cave. Lisa, LOL. You should have seen his face when I told him I used the card. Like I kicked his puppy. I scrolled and scrolled. Birthday plans made without me. Joke after joke at my expense. One message simply said, Lisa, I wish he'd just give us the deed already. What's he waiting for? A funeral? My heart didn't break in that moment. It shattered. Quietly, without drama. Like glass dropped in snow. I set the iPad down. Walked out to the shed. Stood there among the smell of old tools and sawdust and tears. My knees gave out. I sat on the floor and cried until my chest ached. They weren't just taking advantage of me. They were planning for my absence. It wasn't neglect. It wasn't need. It was a scheme. And worst of all, I'd been helping them pull it off. I stopped cooking for them. Stopped answering texts. Lisa noticed. You're being cold, she said one afternoon. This isn't like you. No, it wasn't. But I wasn't the same man anymore. That night, I played Marjorie's old voicemail. The one I saved all these years, the last one before the hospital took her in for the final time. Her voice was soft, like wind over water. I love you. And I trust you to protect what we built. I listened 3 times. Then I went to the garage and pulled out the locked box I hadn't touched in a decade. Inside were papers, the original deed, our marriage license, and Marjorie's letter to Lisa, written when she was just 15. I had planned to give it to her on her wedding day, but after seeing who she married, I kept it back. The letter said, always remember where you came from. This house is full of love, not because of walls, but because of the people who care for it. I knew what I had to do. From that point forward, I started paying attention differently. I became quiet. Watchful. When Lisa spoke, I listened, not to her words, but to her tone. Her phrasing. Her comfort in my silence. I noticed how Tom never looked me in the eye anymore. How they rarely stayed longer than 15 minutes unless they were asking for something. How Lisa only ever called when a bill was due, or Tom was between clients again. They had convinced themselves I was weak. A relic. But I wasn't weak. I was wounded. And I was about to start healing, the hard way. Speech balloon. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. The day I decided to confront Lisa wasn't dramatic. There was no final straw, no shouting match. Just a moment, quiet and clear, where I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. I was thinner. More tired. My eyes had dulled into something like retreat. That wasn't who I raised Lisa to look up to. And that sure as hell wasn't who Marjorie married. So I called her. Told her to come over. Just her, no Tom. She arrived wearing sunglasses, sipping an iced coffee like we were meeting for brunch. She sat across from me in the living room, legs crossed, phone in hand. What's this about? She asked, not even looking up. I took a deep breath. You stole from me. And I know about the messages. Her eyes flicked to mine, but only for a second. Then back to her screen. "I'm not doing this, Dad." "You are doing this," I said firmly. "You're going to sit there and look me in the eye while I speak." She huffed, then finally set the phone down. I pulled the iPad from under the cushion beside me and slid it across the table. I read it all. The plans. The house. The jokes. She didn't even pretend to deny it. Instead, she leaned back and folded her arms. "You were going to give me the house anyway. You always said it'd stay in the family. And I meant after I was gone, Lisa. Not while I was still breathing." Her face twisted. "You're so dramatic." "No," I said, steady now. "I've just been too quiet. And that silence made you think I was stupid." She stood up then. "You know what? You are stupid. You sit here in this dusty old house pretending like you're still important. Like people owe you something because you sacrificed once." I blinked. Once. That single word, as if everything I did for 30 years was just a footnote. A favor. "Get out," I said. She hesitated. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She picked up her phone and stormed out without another word. I sat there in the silence that followed and let it settle in my bones. That was the last time she'd ever speak to me like that in this house. I'd make sure of it. The next day, I visited Mr. Dupree, a friend from church who also happened to be a retired estate attorney. We sat on his porch while cicadas buzzed in the trees. He didn't interrupt much. Just listened while I talked. When I was done, he said quietly, "You've been generous long enough. It's time to protect yourself." He connected me with a lawyer in town, younger guy named Michael with kind eyes and an efficient way of explaining things. Michael reviewed my accounts, property deed, and existing will. "Do you want to remove her entirely?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yes," I said eventually. "But I want a clause added. If anyone contests the will, Lisa, Tom, anyone, then everything goes to charity. No appeals. No loopholes." He nodded. "We can do that." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I got a call from an old neighbor, Patty. She asked if I was all right. Said she overheard Lisa and Tom laughing outside about taking the place over soon. "They think you're just going to roll over," she said, gently. I thanked her. Not for the information, but for caring. Later that week, I bumped into James, one of the younger guys from the hardware store where I used to work part-time. He looked concerned. "You okay, Mr. Harlan? You seem different lately." I told him, sometimes it takes getting pushed to the edge to remember where your feet are. He didn't fully understand, but he smiled and said, "Whatever it is, I hope they know they messed with the wrong old man." That made me laugh, real laughter, the kind that vibrates in your chest. I wasn't done yet. The storm hadn't hit. But the skies were darkening, and this time, I was the one holding the thunder. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon polish and quiet regrets. I sat in a leather chair across from Michael, hands clasped tightly in my lap, like a student preparing for confession. He clicked his pen and looked at me with that patient expression lawyers wear when they know their client's heart is heavier than the paperwork in front of them. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Mr. Harlan?" No one had called me Mr. Harlan in a long time. I nodded slowly. "I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing it because I have to." He slid the first draft of the will across the desk. Clean. Clear. Lisa's name removed. The entire estate, the house, the savings, the land, even the little life insurance policy, redirected. The primary beneficiary, a transitional housing foundation for veterans. And then came the part that twisted the knife in me as much as it would in her, the clause. If the will is challenged by anyone for any reason, all assets go to charity, no exceptions. No payouts. No backroom deals. Just gone. It was airtight. And it hurt. I signed my name. Slowly, deliberately. Each stroke of the pen felt like closing a door I had prayed would always remain open. Michael slid the papers back, giving me a moment. "You did the right thing," he said gently. "It doesn't feel like the right thing," I replied. "It feels like burying someone while they're still alive." He gave me a soft smile. Sometimes protecting yourself means choosing peace over pain, even if that peace comes at a cost. I left his office and walked for a while. Down streets I hadn't visited in years. Past the diner where I took Marjorie after our first ultrasound. Past the school Lisa once ran into with her oversized backpack and wild hair. Every corner seemed to echo with a memory I wasn't ready to let go of. But I kept walking. Later that night, I opened the box of old photographs. I hadn't looked through them since Marjorie passed. There we were, younger versions of ourselves, smiling through burnt dinners, camping trips, and snow days. Lisa's baby pictures stopped me cold. She had Marjorie's eyes. Big and trusting. There was a photo of the three of us, just after she lost her first tooth. She'd drawn a gap-toothed grin across half her face in blue marker and was laughing so hard, she fell off the porch swing. I stared at that picture for a long time. How did we get from there to here? I wanted to believe it wasn't all her fault. That maybe I missed something along the way, too much work, too little praise, too many, "not now," sweethearts. But even if I did falter, nothing justified what she had become. Not the theft. Not the manipulation. Not the plan to erase me while I still breathed in this house. I picked up Marjorie's locket from the mantel. Opened it. Her picture, that same soft smile, always knowing more than she let on. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I should have been harder when it mattered. I should have seen the change coming." But deep down, I knew she would have done the same thing. Quietly, but with strength. She always said, "Love doesn't mean being a doormat. It means protecting your heart, even from those you raised." The next morning, I made one last call, to the charity. A woman named Clara answered. She had a warm voice and listened as I explained what I wanted to do. "You're sure?" she asked. "This is a very generous donation." "I'm sure," I replied. "I want it in writing. If anything happens to me, no loopholes, no rescues. It all goes to you if they try to contest it." She hesitated. "That's rare. But powerful." I thanked her. Hung up. And just like that, the plan was in place. Lisa still came by, but less frequently now. She could tell something had shifted. I was colder. More distant. I stopped making coffee when she visited. Stopped asking about her life. One evening, she stood in the kitchen with her arms folded. "You've changed." I said nothing. "You're acting like a victim." "No," I said calmly. "I'm acting like someone who finally understands what's happening." She opened her mouth, probably to deflect, but I raised my hand to stop her. "You don't have to come around anymore," I said. "Not unless you want to be here, not for the house, or the money, or because it's convenient. Just you. As my daughter." She stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. Then turned and walked out without a word. The next morning, I called Michael and asked for one last addition. "I want to write a letter," I said. "To whom?" "To Lisa. I want her to know why. Someday, maybe she'll read it and remember who she used to be." He agreed. That afternoon, I wrote it by hand. It wasn't cruel. Just honest. I told her I loved her. I told her what she took from me could never be paid back. And I told her the door to forgiveness wasn't locked, but it would never be wide open again. I folded it, sealed it, and left it with the will. Let the world say what it would. I had made my choice. Now all that remained was the reckoning. The final straw didn't arrive with a bang, it came with a clipboard. It was a Saturday morning, and I was trimming the hedges out front. The sun was just cresting over the rooftops, and the neighborhood was still quiet. That's when I saw the car pull up. A clean white SUV with magnetic signs on the side, Stonewell Realty Group. I stood up straight, confused, wiping sweat from my forehead. Tom stepped out of the passenger seat, sunglasses on, wearing a button-down like he was ready to pose for a brochure. A young woman followed behind him with a clipboard in hand, pointing toward the yard and snapping pictures on her phone. And then Lisa got out of the driver's seat. I walked to the edge of the driveway, heart thudding, shears still in my hand. "Lisa," I said slowly, "what is this?" She smiled like I was a guest at a surprise party. "Just getting an appraisal. For down the road." "Down the road?" I echoed, blinking. Tom clapped his hands together. "Yeah, Pops. We've been talking, maybe it's time to put this place on the market. Too much square footage for one guy, you know." I looked at Lisa, stunned. "You didn't even ask me." She rolled her eyes. "It's just a valuation. It doesn't mean anything yet." The real estate agent came up to me with a polite smile. "Hi there, Mr. Harlan. We're just doing a walkthrough. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Can I step inside?" I stepped between her and the porch. "No. You can't." Tom chuckled under his breath. "Don't be difficult." I turned to Lisa. "You planned this behind my back." She didn't deny it. I took a long breath, trying to stay calm, but inside I was trembling. Not with fear, with something sharper. Final. Done. "I think it's time you all left," I said. Tom threw up his hands. "Jesus, it's always a production with you." Lisa pulled the agent aside and muttered something. The woman nodded, clearly uncomfortable, and started walking back toward her SUV. Lisa stayed behind, arms crossed. "You're being ridiculous, Dad," she said. "We're just trying to help you get into something more manageable. A condo, maybe. You'd be closer to." "Enough," I cut in, my voice low and steady. She froze. "I know what this is," I said. "I saw the messages. I know what you think of me. I know what you've been planning. And I've already taken care of it." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I stepped forward. "You're not on the deed. You're not in the will. And if you so much as try to contest what I've done, you'll get nothing. Not a penny. Not a plank of this house. It will all go to charity." She blinked. "You're bluffing." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Try me." Tom whistled low, shaking his head. "Man, you're cold." "No," I said, "I'm finally warm. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again." Lisa looked rattled. She opened her mouth, then shut it. There was a flicker in her eyes, maybe realization, maybe regret. But it passed. "Fine," she snapped. "Rot in this dusty old house, then. See if anyone cares when you're gone." And then she walked to the car and slammed the door shut behind her. I watched them drive away, the SUV rolling down the street like a hearse. I stood in my yard for a long time after that, the breeze tugging gently at my sleeves. I looked up at the porch, at the garden Marjorie planted, at the wind chimes that still sang her lullaby on windy days. I had made my choice. And the peace that came with it was so quiet, it nearly brought me to tears. Inside, I went to the safe and pulled out the documents, the will, the letter to Lisa, the title to the house. I placed them in a neat folder, labeled it in the event of my passing, and slid it back inside. Then I poured myself a cup of tea, walked out to the back porch, and sat in the chair Marjorie used to rock in. I watched the sunlight stretch across the lawn, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like prey in my own home. I felt like the man I used to be. Not a victim. Not a bank. Just a father, reclaiming the home he once built for love, not greed. And the storm that was coming? I was ready for it. Lisa didn't invite me to her birthday dinner. I only knew about it because Patty from next door mentioned it while walking her dog. "They're having it at that new place by the lake," she said, tying a poop bag with the same enthusiasm she used to decorate for Christmas. "Whole family's going. Big crowd. Thought you'd be there." I smiled politely, but inside, something hardened. So that was it. I was no longer just excluded from decisions, now I was excluded from appearances. She must have thought I'd sit home quietly while they celebrated in public. That I'd take the hint, fade into the background like an old photograph on a dusty shelf. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't dead yet. That evening, I put on my best shirt, the one Marjorie bought me for our 25th anniversary. Buttoned it slow. Straightened my back. And packed a simple manila envelope into my coat pocket. The restaurant was one of those trendy lakefront places with Edison bulbs and overpriced salads. I walked in without a reservation. The hostess looked up, about to speak, but I held up one hand. "Just here to see my daughter." The private dining room was in the back. I could hear the clinking glasses and fake laughter before I even turned the corner. There she was, Lisa, holding court at the center of the long table. Surrounded by Tom, a few cousins, and some people I barely recognized. The birthday banner hung crooked behind her, spelling, "Cheers to 35 years." I stepped in. The room went quiet. Forks paused mid-air. A few heads turned slowly. Lisa froze, wine glass in hand. "Dad," she said, like I was a ghost. "Just stopping by," I said, my voice calm and measured. Didn't want to miss the celebration. Tom was the first to recover. He leaned back in his chair, smug smile forming. "We didn't think you'd be up for crowds, Pops." I ignored him. Reached into my coat. Pulled out the envelope. "Just a little gift," I said, handing it to Lisa. "Go on. Open it." She hesitated, looking around the table, sensing tension. Slowly, she slid the papers out. Her face changed. She scanned the documents. The revised will. The property title. The clause. And then, the letter, my letter, written in the clean, deliberate hand I had inherited from my father. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the opening lines. "What is this?" she asked, voice low, color draining from her cheeks. "This," I said, "is the truth. In writing." Tom leaned over, reading upside down. "Is this legal?" "Oh, it's legal," I said. "Ironclad. If you or anyone here tries to touch what I've left, it goes to charity. All of it." Lisa's eyes darted from the papers to my face. She looked small in that moment. Not like a villain, but like someone who'd just realized the game was over. "You came here, to humiliate me," she whispered. "No," I replied. "I came here to end the pretending. You didn't even have the decency to tell me about this dinner. I found out from a neighbor. After everything, the theft, the manipulation, the lies, you thought I'd just disappear quietly." Silence. All around us, people avoided eye contact. A few guests stood awkwardly, unsure whether to sit or slip away. No one touched their drinks. Lisa placed the envelope gently on the table, hands folded over it like she was trying to contain it. "You don't understand," she said finally. "I was scared. Tom lost work. We were drowning in debt. I didn't know how to ask." I shook my head. You did know how to ask. You just didn't want to hear no. So you took instead. I looked around the room, these people who'd watched her lie, cheat, and manipulate without stepping in. Maybe they didn't know everything. Maybe they didn't care. It didn't matter. Because I did care. I straightened up. This will be the last time I step into a room you didn't invite me to, Lisa. I've made peace with my choices. You can spend the rest of your life being angry, or you can grow up and remember the man who raised you. That part's up to you. I turned to leave. Lisa didn't call out. Tom didn't speak. No one followed me. I walked out the door and into the warm evening air, the lake breeze cool against my face. I didn't look back. Not once. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, just listening to the wind chimes. The house felt different. Like it belonged to me again, not in paperwork, but in spirit. Marjorie's garden rustled softly in the breeze. I whispered, "We're getting there, love." The battle wasn't just won, it was done. And the peace that followed? It was real. Brain, do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The house was quiet the next morning. Not the kind of quiet that comes from loneliness, the kind that comes from relief. Like a pressure valve had finally been released after years of building tension. I brewed my coffee slow, stood at the window watching the sun stretch across the back garden, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Lisa didn't call. Tom didn't text. No messages, no knocks at the door, no passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. It was like they'd both disappeared. And truth be told, I didn't miss them. Word traveled fast in our town. By Monday, the whispers had made their way from the restaurant to the post office, the church steps, the diner. Everywhere I went, I caught half-glances and polite nods. Some people looked away. Some offered the tight-lipped smile of quiet approval. And a few, the ones who had known Marjorie, gave me something else, understanding. At the grocery store, an older woman I hadn't spoken to in years leaned over the produce and said, "You did what a lot of us wish we could." I didn't ask what she meant. I knew. The truth was, I felt lighter. As if my spine had uncurled after years of quiet stooping. I walked through the aisles with my head high, my cart half empty, and my mind clearer than it had been in a decade. Back home, I pulled out old photo albums, not the digital kind, the thick leather-bound ones Marjorie used to organize by year. Pages stuck together slightly, corners curled, memories pressed in like dried flowers. There we were, Lisa at 5, her missing front teeth and pudding-stained overalls, Lisa at 13, with braces and too much eyeliner, Lisa at 21, graduating, face glowing. And there, always in the corners, was Marjorie. Holding her hand. Straightening her collar. Smiling quietly behind the scenes. I paused on a photo of all three of us, taken just before Lisa left for college. She was standing in the driveway with one hand on her suitcase, the other clinging to Marjorie's arm. I stood behind them both, arms crossed, proud and terrified. I ran a finger down the edge of that picture, tracing the curve of my wife's smile. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I held on too long." But maybe that was the point of love, holding on too long, even when everyone else lets go too easily. Later that afternoon, I took a slow walk around the neighborhood. The air smelled like rain was coming, though the sky was still clear. I passed by Patty's house, she waved from her porch, her dog curled at her feet. "Hey there, Mr. Harlan," she called out. "Haven't seen your daughter around lately." I gave a gentle shrug. "She's got her own path to walk now." She nodded, her smile more solemn. "Sometimes distance brings clarity." Just down the road, I stopped by the church garden. I used to help plant the spring flowers there back when my knees didn't argue so much. Pastor Raymond was out front, trimming the hedges. He greeted me with a nod. Heard about the birthday dinner? I raised an eyebrow. News travels fast. He smirked. Small towns. People pay attention when someone stops letting themselves be walked on. We talked for a bit, about gardens, the weather, nothing too deep. But as I turned to go, he said something that stayed with me. Peace doesn't always come wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes, it comes in finally choosing yourself. That night, I lit a candle for Marjorie and placed it on the porch rail. She used to light one whenever things felt heavy, said it helped her remember that light was still possible. I watched the flame flicker gently in the dark, the wind teasing it but never quite snuffing it out. The next day, James, the kid from the hardware store, stopped by unexpectedly. He had a bag of tools slung over his shoulder and a hopeful look in his eyes. Heard you might be looking for help around the house. I said that? I asked, chuckling. Well, he said, scratching his head, Patty said she heard it from someone who heard it from someone at the diner. I smiled and opened the gate. Come on in. You can help me clean out the shed. We worked side by side for a couple hours. He asked questions about tools I hadn't used in years. I told him stories, about the time Marjorie and I tried to build a bookshelf together and nearly divorced over it. About how Lisa once painted the dog by accident and blamed the neighbor's kids. He laughed in all the right places. Not polite laughter, genuine. Like he actually cared. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, he dusted off his hands and looked around. This place feels like it has stories, he said. It does, I replied. Some good. Some hard. All real. When he left, I stood on the porch again, watching the candle's last bit of wax fade into a soft curl of smoke. I wasn't alone. Not really. People had begun to come back, not the ones I'd clung to out of obligation, but the ones who saw me. The man. The father. The husband. The silence after betrayal wasn't emptiness. It was space. And slowly, new voices were beginning to fill it. The idea came to me one morning while I was sitting on the porch, staring at the garden Marjorie planted. It was overgrown now, lavender spilling out of its borders, rose bushes in need of pruning, the stone path buried under weeds. But beneath the chaos, the bones of her design were still there. And watching James walk through the gate the day before, light in his step, full of energy, something clicked. This house didn't have to be a tomb of memories. It could live again. Not as an inheritance. Not as some empty monument. But as a place for people who needed it, people who still understood value the way Marjorie and I once did. So I started calling around. The charity I'd named in the will, Homes for Vets, turned out to be more than just a cause on paper. Clara, the woman I'd spoken to before, remembered me. You're the one who added the contest clause, she said with a chuckle. You left quite an impression. I asked if they had a local chapter. Turns out, they'd been looking for a base in our town. Something stable. Quiet. Close to town and hospitals. A place for veterans in transition, getting off the streets, back on their feet, or just trying to feel human again. I've got the space, I said. 3 empty bedrooms. A basement with potential. A garden that needs hands. You bring the men. I'll bring the roof. There was a pause on her end. Then, Mr. Harlan, are you serious? As a heart attack, I said. Though hopefully not literally. She laughed, and something about that laugh felt right. Like a door opening. That afternoon, I grabbed a notebook and started making a list. It had been a long time since I made a list that wasn't about groceries or bills. This one had purpose. Fix the gutters. Paint guest room number 1. Replace porch light. Clear out basement. Call city zoning office. Clean Marjorie's garden. By the end of the day, I had 6 pages filled. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't tired from it. I was energized. James came by again, this time bringing a friend, a quiet kid named Marcus who knew electrical work. They stayed for hours, moving furniture, cleaning out old junk, patching drywall. No complaints. No grumbling. Just honest hands and grateful hearts. I ordered pizza and made lemonade. We sat on the porch and talked like men do, slow, easy, without too much sentiment. But I caught James looking at the photos on the wall more than once. His eyes lingered on one of Marjorie. "She looks kind," he said softly. "She was," I replied. "She'd have liked you." They left just before sunset, promising to return Saturday. I watched them go, then turned back to the house. It didn't feel like my house anymore. It felt like our house again. The next morning, I called Clara to finalize the details. We'd start with 3 vets, 1 per room. They'd help maintain the house, learn some trade skills, and get back on their feet. A year at most, then rotate out. "I want them to feel like they belong," I told her. "Not like guests. Not like burdens." She got quiet for a second. Then said, "Mr. Harlan, most of these men haven't heard words like that in years." That hit me harder than I expected. Later that week, I cleared out the last of Lisa's things. Boxes she left in the attic years ago, old clothes, trinkets, a few childhood books. I didn't throw them away. I packed them neatly, taped the lids shut, and labeled them in permanent marker. Lisa, hold until claimed. I didn't hate her. I didn't love her the way I used to either. But I hadn't stopped hoping, not completely. I left the boxes in the garage. Just in case. A week later, the first 2 veterans arrived. John, a Vietnam vet in his 70s, thin as a rail but sharp-eyed. And Aaron, 33, discharged after a bad back injury, barely spoke above a whisper. They looked around the house like they couldn't believe it was real. "You sure we're allowed here?" Aaron asked. "You're not just allowed," I said. "You're needed." John set down his duffel and nodded. "You got tools?" "I miss fixing things." I smiled. "You're gonna love the shed." That night, I made chili, and we sat at the table like family. No lectures, no speeches. Just food, quiet stories, and the hum of something new beginning. After they went to bed, I walked outside and looked up at the stars. "Marjorie," I whispered, "it's happening." The house, our house, wasn't just standing again. It was alive. The house changed in ways I never expected. Not loud changes, no knocking down walls or repainting in flashy colors. Just quiet shifts. Shoes by the door that weren't mine. Tools arranged neatly in the shed by hands that respected them. A new rhythm of footsteps down the hall, soft voices in the morning, someone humming while making coffee at sunrise. John rose early. Always had a newspaper under his arm, though I never saw him buy one. He'd sit on the porch with me, sipping his tea like we were old war buddies, even though our battles were generations apart. Aaron spent most of his time in the garden. Didn't say much, but he listened well. Every afternoon, he'd kneel in the dirt, sleeves rolled up, tending to Marjorie's roses like he'd known her himself. "I used to do this with my mom," he told me one day, barely above a whisper. "Before things got hard." That was all he said. That was enough. The third room stayed empty a while. We wanted to wait for the right person, someone who didn't just need shelter, but who understood that this house was different. Sacred, in a way. Then came Carla. A Navy vet, mid-40s, strong voice, and sharper eyes. She arrived with one bag and a folded American flag she refused to explain. She shook my hand like she was taking command of a ship. "Hope you don't mind a woman in the mix," she said. I raised a daughter, I replied. I've seen worse. She laughed, full and loud, and the sound lingered in the hallway long after she unpacked. By the end of the first month, the house felt like it had a pulse again. The old fridge buzzed a little louder, the floorboards creaked more often, like the walls were stretching after years of silence. We had dinners. Not every night, but often. Nothing fancy, chili, pasta, grilled cheese, but we always sat together. Shared stories. Not always deep ones, but real ones. John talked about fishing trips with his brother. Aaron once described the stars in the desert during a night patrol. Carla? She didn't say much about her service, but she told us about the dog she lost before deployment. Best damn companion I ever had, she said, eyes glassy but proud. They didn't fill the space Lisa left, they weren't replacements. They were reminders. That love doesn't have to be blood. That loyalty doesn't always come from the people you raise. Sometimes, it comes from the people who show up, and stay. Neighbors began to take notice. Patty came by with pies more than once. A few of the church ladies dropped off casseroles. One even offered to teach Erin how to make her famous peach cobbler. I caught James one afternoon, standing at the end of the driveway, just watching. You need something? I called out. He smiled. Nah. Just, looks good, that's all. And it did. It looked like life. Then, one evening, just as we were finishing dinner, the doorbell rang. Carla opened it and called over her shoulder, "You expecting anyone?" I wasn't. But when I walked into the hallway, I froze. Emily. My granddaughter. Lisa's daughter. She looked taller than I remembered. 17 now, maybe 18. Brown curls pulled into a messy bun. Nervous hands clutching her phone. "Hi, Grandpa," she said quietly. My throat tightened. "Hi, sweetheart." She looked past me, eyes wide, taking in the house. "Is it true? What Mom said?" "That depends on what she told you. She said you gave everything away. That you hate us now." I took a slow breath. "I don't hate anyone, Emily. I just stopped waiting to be respected." She nodded, eyes wet but steady. "I told her I wanted to see you. She said no. So I came anyway." I stepped aside. "Then come in." She walked into the living room like it was a museum, touching photos, glancing at furniture. Then she sat on the couch, legs curled up like she used to when she was little. "I remember that garden," she said, pointing out the window. "Grandma let me name the sunflowers." I smiled. "You called the tallest one Becky." She laughed. "I don't know why." I sat beside her. "Because kids are allowed to be strange and wonderful. That's why." We talked for hours. She told me about school, about how things at home felt tense. She said Tom barely spoke to her. That Lisa snapped often. That dinner at home felt like walking on eggshells. "I missed the quiet here," she whispered. I didn't ask her to stay. But when she stood up to leave, I put a small key in her palm. "What's this?" "Back door," I said. "You're always welcome here. No matter what happens." She threw her arms around me, tight and fast. I closed my eyes and held on. Not to the past, but to her. She left with a smile, and I stood at the door long after she was gone. Carla came up beside me, arms crossed. "She's a good one." "She is." Erin spoke from the hallway. "Like real family." And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't lose a daughter. I gained a house full of hope. It was a gray afternoon when Lisa came back. Rain had passed through earlier, leaving the driveway slick and the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. I had just finished sweeping the porch when I saw the familiar car pull in, not the red Dodge Challenger, mind you. That one had been sold months ago, quietly, probably out of desperation. This was something smaller. Used. Modest. She sat behind the wheel for a long moment. I didn't move. Just waited. Eventually, she stepped out. No sunglasses. No fancy shoes. Just jeans, a windbreaker, and eyes that looked tired. She walked up the path slowly, hands in her pockets, eyes glancing at the porch swing, the garden, the fresh coat of paint on the shutters. The house looked different now. She looked different too. "Hi, Dad," she said softly. I nodded. "Lisa." We stood in silence, the kind that used to pass between us when words were too heavy to carry. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "Good. I've had enough of that." She exhaled. Her shoulders sagged, the kind of release that only comes when a person's been holding something for too long. "I heard about the vets," she said. "About Emily visiting. About everything, really." I didn't reply. "I guess I deserve all of it," she added. I looked at her then. Really looked. And I didn't see the spoiled woman who stole from me. I saw the child who used to curl up with Marjorie and fall asleep in the garden. I saw the teenager who once cried when she didn't get into her first college choice. I saw the young woman I used to believe in. And I saw the woman who broke that belief. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked. Not angry. Just tired. She looked down at the porch floorboards, scuffed her shoe against one. "I don't want anything," she said. I don't know. I guess I just needed to see for myself. That you were okay." "I am," I said. "I finally am." She nodded. Bit her lip. Eyes shining, but she blinked the tears away. "I read the letter you left with the will," she said. "I deserved every word of it. But there was one line I keep thinking about." "Which one?" "The part where you said, 'I still hope you find your way back, but the road doesn't lead through this house anymore.'" She looked up at me, and for once, she didn't look defensive. She looked human. "I've been trying to find that road, Dad. I've been in therapy. I sold the car. I'm working now, bookkeeping for a dental office. Tom and we're not together anymore." That surprised me more than anything else she'd said. "I kept blaming you for everything," she continued. "But really, I was angry because you didn't give me what I thought I was owed." I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" She smiled weakly. "Now I realize I wasn't owed anything. I should have been grateful. I wasn't. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't rush to forgive, or to soften, or to tell her everything would be okay. Because it wouldn't be. Not entirely. Some wounds close. Others leave marks. But still, she showed up. "You hungry?" I asked finally. She looked surprised. "A little." "Good. Carla made stew. There's probably enough for 2 bowls if you don't mind sitting at the counter." She followed me inside. The house was alive with gentle sound, the clink of dishes, low jazz playing from the radio, Aaron humming softly in the hallway. Lisa looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. "This place feels warm," she said. "It is." We ate in silence. She didn't ask to stay. I didn't offer. But when she left, she turned at the door. "Thank you," she said. "For not shutting the door in my face." I gave a soft smile. "Just don't expect it to stay open." She nodded. "Fair." I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. The stew pot still sat on the stove, the spoon clinking gently as it settled. I wasn't angry. I wasn't overjoyed either. I was balanced. And that was more than I'd hoped for. That night, I stood on the porch and looked at the candle I'd lit for Marjorie. I whispered, she came back. Not asking for anything this time. Just came. I imagined Marjorie smiling, saying what she always said when Lisa made even the smallest effort, "See? There's still hope." She was right. There always is. Speech balloon, would you have done the same in his shoes? Let us know in the comments. The sign went up on a bright spring morning. Simple wood. Hand carved. Just 3 words, burned into the grain with steady hands and sealed with care. Marjorie's house. No fanfare. No ribbon cutting. Just me, John, Carla, Aaron, and a few of the neighbors standing quietly in the garden as the sun broke over the roof. The same roof Marjorie and I had shingled one hot July, arguing over angles and laughing until our hands hurt. Clara from the charity had come, too. She stood beside me, mist in her eyes. "You sure about the name?" she asked. I nodded. She gave more than anyone ever knew. This place has always been hers. It was no longer just a home, it was a refuge. The paperwork was finalized. The zoning approved. The transitional program fully funded. Veterans would rotate through, 3 or 4 at a time, each with a room, a mentor, a chance to start over. A community, not charity. John offered to manage the workshop, teach basic woodworking to anyone who came through. Carla was already drawing up plans to convert the garage into a training center. Aaron, well, he tended the garden like it was holy ground. He'd planted new rows of vegetables, trimmed the roses back, and even added a small bench with a plaque. In loving memory of Marjorie, whose roots still bloom. It took me a while to stop crying when I saw that. The house buzzed now, not with chaos, but with purpose. You could hear it in the early morning, when coffee brewed and footsteps moved across the floors. In the evenings, there were stories told under porch lights, meals passed between hands that once shook from trauma, and laughter that made the walls feel young again. One night, I found a folded piece of paper on my nightstand. Carla's handwriting. "Thanks for making room for people like us. You didn't have to. That's what makes it mean more." I kept that note in Marjorie's Bible, pressed between Psalms and a faded photo of our wedding day. I didn't see Lisa again for a while after her visit. But Emily came. Regularly. She helped Aaron in the garden, stayed for dinner, sometimes even brought her homework and sat at the kitchen table like she'd done as a child. She didn't talk much about her mother, and I didn't ask. We just existed in the same space, quiet, comfortable, healing. One afternoon, she brought an envelope. "From Mom," she said, hesitating. "She said you didn't have to read it. But I think she wants you to." I opened it that night. It was short. Apologetic. "Not for everything, but for enough. I don't expect forgiveness," it read. "I just want you to know I see it now. What I did. What I became. I don't blame you for anything. I hope Emily learns more from you than she ever did from me." There was no return address. Just a signature. Lisa. I folded it and placed it in the same box that held Marjorie's locket and my original will. Not because it erased the past, but because it finally acknowledged it. Forgiveness is never a single moment. It's a choice you keep making, over and over. Months passed. The seasons turned. The house settled into its new life. On what would have been Marjorie's 70th birthday, we held a little celebration. Nothing grand, just lemonade, cookies, and stories shared in the backyard beneath the old oak. James came with his wife. Patty brought her dog. Carla gave a speech, short and shaky, about second chances and quiet places that save loud hearts. Even Emily stood up. She never met me, she said, looking at the rose bushes, but I feel like she would have loved me anyway. And I hope I can grow into the kind of woman she would have been proud of. I didn't speak. I couldn't. But I sat in Marjorie's rocking chair, now repaired and sanded smooth, and listened. Listened to the life we built continuing on. Listened to the love we planted blooming anew. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, I walked out to the edge of the garden, the very spot where Marjorie once knelt, dirt on her knees, sweat on her brow, humming a hymn I never quite learned the name of. I kept my promise, I whispered. I protected what we built. The wind rustled the leaves. A single petal drifted down, landing at my feet. And just like that, I knew. I was no longer waiting for redemption. I was living in it.